Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We're digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. We'd love to hear where you think we got it right and where we just don't know what we're talking about. You can do that on Rumble. Got a great comment section there. Unsilentpodcast.com is our website, and all the various and sundry social media channels where America convenes to get mad at each other. So, Ryan, speaking of that.
Speaking of getting mad, yeah. Something actually did kind of piss me off this week, which most of these things that you and I talk about they're aggravating and they're deflating and they're frustrating.
Sure.
But not a lot of them like really make me mad. This one really made me mad.
Oh, tell me.
Yeah, and I'm not going to play the video because she's speaking in Spanish and I had the translation in front of me, but there was a Democrat representative. I think she's from Illinois.
Okay.
She was speaking in Mexico City. And I heard last night, I don't know if this is true, this is what I heard last night, that she's the child of 2 illegal immigrants.
Okay.
So she's here. Her parents were not legal when she was born. She's a citizen because she was born here. Now she's in Congress representing the great state of Illinois. She's in Mexico and she makes some kind of speech. And she finishes a speech by saying, I want to say this in Spanish. I'm paraphrasing because I don't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
I want to say this in Spanish, and it's really important to me. I'm a proud Guatemalan before I'm an American.
And yet she is a representative, an official representative elected.
Presumably swore an oath the United States Constitution, presumably, which somewhere in there probably says you put our interests above everybody else's.
Well, that's kind of implied. I mean, if it's not explicit, depending on which jurisdiction you're in, it's implied, yes.
Yeah. And I thought, okay, so after I got done being pissed off, it really did make me, even I don't live in Illinois, like, she's not my congresswoman, but okay, when you unpack this, there's so many elements to it. Okay, if you're Guatemalan first, why don't you just go to Guatemala and fix that?
Why are you not in Guatemala? Yes.
Why don't you just go if you want to be in politics? Like, they have a Congress of some sort. They have leadership roles. They have all the opportunities to lead and govern that we have here in some capacity.
Right.
Why not just do that, right? which leads to the broader picture. All these people who are anti-American, of which there's no shortage now.
Sure, there's a ton of them now. Yeah.
Again, you and I talk about the tide is turning, the pendulum swinging back the other direction, but there's still a decent percentage of our population that is pretty explicitly anti-American.
That's true.
We're a bad country founded on bad principles by bad people who did bad things, right? So for all of those, like, why don't you just pick the country that best represents your values and go live there and assimilate to their culture, right?
Right.
But for this woman specifically, help me make sense of it, Dave. Like, this just is so aggravating that a elected person here to help the people, presumably there's poor people in her district, that could use some help, or there's laws that would make their lives better if she focused her energy on that. What the actual F is she doing saying that? Like, explain it to me, Dave. Make sense.
So I think it comes back to a worldview. It's an ideology and a worldview that says that, I think you could probably even pull out Guatemalan and you could put in any group that is not the perceived, at least, as the most powerful, colonizer group, which, you and I are, we're colonizers, Brian. I don't know if you know that. There's a colonizer meeting next month.
The benefits, but I get all the
get the grief.
I get the grief. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the grief. I mean, we're going to address this at the next white colonizer meeting next week at the Elks Lodge or something, I think.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back to I think you could pull her statement out and put in if they're during the Antifa riots, I'm black, I'm Hispanic, I'm gay, I'm a furry, I identify as whatever I identify with, and that's at the top of that intersectional pyramid where, the thing you actually are. I mean, the facts of the matter, we know this, of course, because there's plenty of men running around in, Tim Curry outfits from the Rocky Horror Picture Show that are calling themselves women. And so reality doesn't, the reality of swearing an oath to the Constitution, the reality of I'm representing my district and hopefully advocating for the people of my district, whether they be Guatemalan or not. These facts that you seem to be so attached to don't really have a lot of purchase when it comes to that worldview. So the worldview trumps the nationality or any commitment she's made.
I would give some of those groups of people that you're describing a bit of a pass, and because I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't. So what I mean is, I would say that, like, if you were waterboarding me and said, "Are you a husband first or an American first?" I'd probably say husband first.
Sure.
Right. So I guess you could make correlations between my perspective on that and their perspective of being a furry or trans or whatever. I can kind of wrap my head around that.
Sure.
I cannot wrap my head around you saying that you're another country's person first. She sits on the subcommittee for border security. She's on the Armed Services Committee, like or some. I may be getting the names of the committees wrong, but she's on versions of those. She's directly influencing our government's policy to deal with other countries in positive and negative and neutral ways, like Guatemala. Like, it's so infuriating. But
well, and when when she is, and I think the difference is when you're sitting in the position you're in. So she's in Mexico City, in theory, not because she's from Guatemala, but because she is a representative of the United States, right? I mean, I'm sure that sort of facilitated all of that. So she's sitting there in the capacity of a United States representative. And so that's what makes it, to me, to your point, somebody asks you who you are. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is not, well, I run Greenhaven Interactive, I'm a business owner. You're going to come up with the things that are most personal to you. And that's very appropriate. And that's appropriate for people that, have differing perspectives on the world than I do. But she, in her particular situation, I think that makes it egregious, is she is there because of this oath that she took and because the people of her district elected her. And who knows, maybe the government paid for her trip to Mexico. There's lots of those, government junkets that take place.
Yeah, I can't imagine Mexico paid for that trip.
Well, maybe they got to pay for it with their most recent wall payment. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll kick things off with what pissed me off, and then we'll segment into something that is honestly just making me laugh hysterically in my room by myself with nobody else around, which is probably pretty weird. But the state of Texas is redrawing their district lines.
Oh, I love this story.
To represent their population, whatever. Okay, it's we call it gerrymandering. That term is not a common modern term. It's been around for, I don't know, a century at least, probably a couple, right? So it comes time to redraw the districts, aka gerrymander the districts to favor the people who are currently in power, which happens to be in Texas, the Republicans.
Yep.
And so these guys, they bolt to Illinois and are put up in a hotel, and they charter a private plane, of course, because you can't fly Southwest when you're in a position like that. And I'm guessing they didn't pay for the trip. I don't know, but I'm not. I don't think there was a lot of Venmo activity between them and the coordinator as they made this trip. So they can break quorum and not allow the Congress in Texas, the legislature in Texas, to hold their vote on this thing. And so, but okay, so they bolt out of there and they run away to stop the process. Okay, I can wrap my head around that. The thing that makes me chuckle, though, is they go up to Illinois and they hold this press conference, and they got their talking points,
right?
And clearly the focus group they've hired told him to say people want the Democrats to fight more, and they want them to be fighting, and we're not fighting hard enough. Like that was clearly imprinted upon their brain.
Right.
They're saying things as they've bolted out of the state. They're saying things like, we're bringing a knife to a knife fight now, and we're fighting now, and we're bringing a gun to a gunfight. And they're saying all these fighting things, and it reminds me of, I don't want to say names, but like a guy. Everybody went to high school with this guy. The guy in high school who had a big mouth, but was kind of a scrawny guy and just had a big mouth, but just never put himself in a position to get physically harmed, but would say like the most egregious things to people, but would just always escape the penalty. They remind me of that guy, and that's what makes me laugh. Is okay? It's one thing to flee. It's another thing to flee and run your mouth.
Right. Well, and again, it's 100% performative because they're not going to stay there forever. Eventually, the whole thing's going to get done. They're going to, I mean, the thing that's interesting about it this time is because they've done this before, whenever they have a problem, whenever the vote's going to go against them, they use a procedural, thing where, we don't have a quorum, we can't take the vote. And so
we got to pull the fire alarm. We got to do whatever it takes.
So, but this time they've got a $500 a day fine for each of them, and there's of course they're exploring in Texas the option of, well, does this violate your oath, and so therefore are you going to be ejected from office? Now, I was thinking about this in terms of like catalyst events. When anytime there's anything like this, because catalysts of major events are usually small and are usually really weird little things, like World War I started with the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand on a back road with a wrong turn of his
a wrong
carriage
turn
drive
on a parade or something like that.
So it's just this obscure little thing, and it resulted in a world war that collapsed empires and all sorts of things. So I look at these little things like this, and at first I'm like, oh, it's just bunch more political theater. But what happens if they've asked the FBI to get involved? What happens if for some reason, I don't think it'll happen because I don't think it's a federal matter, but what if the FBI starts arresting people and hauling them back to? I mean, you could see there's so many possibilities in our current society for these weird little things, these weird little games that people play to escalate. So you've got Texas doing this, and then now you've got an escalation where Gavin Newsom says, well, okay, that's for, and Kathy Hochul in New York, Gavin Newsom in California says, well, you do that, we're going to do this. We're just going to redistrict. And so you then get this red-blue divide getting worse and worse and worse, and escalatory actions taking place, fines and arrests, and okay, well, then we're going to arrest the Republicans in California. You could see how it's not, a few years ago I would say, well, it's a bit of a stretch, Dave, but in this day and age, who knows? It could escalate into very bad things, violence. Who knows?
A couple of things that come to mind as you're saying that stuff. One of them is like Gavin Newsom and Kathy Hochul saying, well, we're going to do this. Well, they've already done it.
Well, so they're a little late.
You look at a map of Illinois. I saw a map. I didn't save it, but I saw a map, and I don't know. It's like 40% people vote Republican in Illinois. And they have, like the Republicans in the state legislature have like 12% of the seats or something like that. Like they've done this gerrymandering to minimize the impact of Republicans. And I'm pulling those numbers out of thin air. They're askew though. They're not in alignment. The percentage of how people vote in the state versus seats in the state legislature are not in alignment.
Right.
And on the map though, it shows this one little squiggly red
thin line,
squiggly little blue line that goes across state that basically follows like a highway corridor.
Right.
It's like a line that's like 25 miles wide and like 150 miles or 250 miles long.
Right.
And that's the district, right?
Yeah.
And in California, same thing. Like the percentage of people who vote Republican in California is like 40%.
Right.
But the percentage of seats that Republicans have in the House legislature are like, 12% or something. Right. Like that. I think it was Delaware or Maine, somewhere up there. 0. Trump won whatever state it was. Trump, I think, won the state, and they have 0 House Republicans in the state legislature, not the federal, right? So there's that, which that's where I kind of go back to. This is just the games they play, and
it is.
If you're going to call balls and strikes, call balls and strikes. Like they won the election, they can do this thing that you do.
Yep.
So there's that. Then the second thing is that the cynic in me says these guys fled to Illinois, praying, hoping that they would get arrested.
Sure.
Because remember a couple of years ago when AOC was at that rally and she didn't get arrested, but she put her hands behind her back so the picture would look like she had handcuffs on.
Right.
They're begging for those optics.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're absolutely begging for those things. So I hope the feds or the law enforcement or the people directing law enforcement don't fall into a dumb trap. Those are the optics. They got to be just begging for those.
It is all performative. The whole thing is performative. Almost all of our politics all around is performative, right? I mean, that's just, and it's not just on the left hand side too. I mean, Trump's whole kind of thing is his whole public facing persona is a performative persona. I mean, we're
putting a nuclear plant on the moon. Okay. Like there has to be a problem somewhere in the United States worth fixing rather than putting a nuclear plant on the moon. There has to be a problem in Texas worth fixing. Okay, you take the L here, take the loss, and then get to work. There has to be in Illinois for that chick who went to Mexico City. There has to be a problem in Illinois worth solving.
Right.
Like, just get your ass to work, people. Like, I don't get it.
Well, and it is, I think, for Kenny G's sake, I think you can determine that when you're in the fourth turning, that everybody will be consumed with performance and with the narrative and with whatever the tribes are 70 years from now. We're all consumed with all of that. And the most basic things. I mean, as I drive around where I live I'm in Tacoma as I sit here right now. As I drive around and, there's potholes and there's, I just get this, I have this fantasy, Brian. It's a really sick fantasy. I have this fantasy of going down to a county council or city council meeting and standing in front of them and bringing photographs of how crappy the roads are and how crappy all the stuff is and say, what are you trying to pass today? Get your butt in gear and do something you're supposed to do. It'll never happen because I know it's a waste of time.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, you're a white colonizer, so you would not get a chance to speak.
Yeah, that's right.
And they have bigger things to take care of, Dave, like how they're going to get themselves on magazine covers and whatnot. And,
absolutely.
And all this goes back to, I think I said this a few months ago, but the more you and I drill into these things and talk about all these, the more it boils down to a few very simple points for me. And the one on this is in World War II, coming out of World War II, I mean, in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, even a decade ago, there was guys who were fought valiantly in World War II and did heroic things, and their family never knew.
Right.
Right. And so that's how we came into the first turning.
Sure.
And then now in the fourth turning, these people do jack and or shit every day, and they can't wait to be heralded for what a great job they're doing.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly
That's the trajectory we've been on over 80, 90 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
80 years now. This is a through line for all this stuff.
Yeah.
Honor, duty, doing the right thing when nobody's looking, integrity, honor, all that stuff in 1946 to 2026 we're coming into.
Yep.
None of those things, but look at me. Look at me. Yeah. Hey, did I make the magazine cover? Am I trending? Did my video go viral?
Right.
Meanwhile, they're doing nothing substantive.
And there's no way to. And the thing that I've come to believe is I've been writing this little list of survival skills for the fourth turning, and one of the fourth turning survival skills I think is a little bit of ambivalence, because there, when in terms of how seriously I can take a lot of this stuff, there is no way that can get fixed outside of an existential crisis. It just can't get fixed. I mean, look at we have now we talked about Sydney Sweeney last week. I don't remember if we were talking about the calls for her being or the accusations for her being a Nazi.
Because, we talked about that.
Did we talk about that? Yeah. I mean, just you cannot fix this kind of insanity outside of, we've got 3 cities that are on fire from Russian nuclear bombs. Maybe we should put all this stuff aside and kind of focus on survival for a little while. What do you think? I just don't think so there's a certain amount of ambivalence. I've been a part of a variety of groups on Facebook, these discussion groups. I was a part of one recently where it was designed to bring people from the right and the left together so they could have logical and respectful conversations. And I'm like, I'm down for that. I like a good logical conversation. I don't mind people disagreeing with me. If people are going to yell at me and, call me a Nazi or something, I'm just like, I really got no time for that because that's stupid.
You probably got your fill of that for this year by, January 17th.
Well, yeah, yes, exactly. I mean, but even in this group, it's like, the meme posting and like, well, the right is this and the left is this, and it's just forget it. I'm just out of here. I'm done with this. This is dumb. It's just the nature of the era that we live in.
Yeah, and so the other through line, as you were talking about that stuff, that reminds me that you and I talk about a lot, is we have the luxury of this. Like, there's no consequences for this lady in Mexico City. No consequences.
Yeah.
No, like they use the word accountability, but they flee from the word consequences.
Right.
Because accountability has no meaning. There's no definitive meaning to what that is. Where consequences is a little more zeroed in, right? There's no consequences for the Texas legislators leaving Texas. There's no consequences for saying we're going to put a nuclear plant on the moon when we're $37 trillion in debt. Like,
well, it's funny. The thing that you were saying earlier about the Texas legislators talking about we're fighting. You're fighting by running away. I mean, come on.
Again, it's that guy you went to high school with, Dave. That's got a big mouth, but never
does anything. Yeah, exactly. Never puts himself in harm's way. Yeah, exactly.
No, again, I'm not gonna say names, but we all went to high school with the guy.
Yeah, I remember the guy.
Run your mouth, but always escape the consequences. Something, through speed or deafness or hiding behind the teacher or whatever.
Right, exactly. I remember. Yes, I do.
We didn't respect those people, by the way, is my point.
Yeah.
Like, they were looked down upon. Like that. It's one thing to get in a fight and get your butt kicked, right?
Right.
It's a whole nother thing. And people will still respect you. Like, okay, they might mock you for a couple of days, but then 2 months later, well, at least he did it, right?
Right. Yep.
That guy gets no respect. Run your mouth and never like put yourself in harm's way and like defend what you're doing. Like, that guy is mocked and ridiculed for years. Like, and I don't know how they don't get this.
But do you think they really care? I mean,
no.
It's because the problem, one of the structural problems of our system is that everything is a short-term cycle. Everybody depends on the news cycle being a few days long, the election cycle being 2 years long, and so you've got Andrew Cuomo coming back after all that he was, he's accused of sexual stuff, and he's, doing the dead people in nursing homes because he screwed up COVID so bad. Yeah. You wait it out a little bit, wait 6 months, wait a year, it all kind of dies down, and we remember that. And now he's not Zoran Mondani, so he's like the solid guy now. It's the operating system of the age.
Yeah, and also, she and the Texas legislators and what's his name, Cuomo in New York, they're not speaking to the populace. They're speaking to the donors.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's the donors and it's the activists, because I think the strategists realize that the vast majority of people don't really care that much. It's the activist class, the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5%, they really care, and they get all the attention and the noise. And so therefore they can move the big mass of people because, they're loud. And so therefore you don't bother to speak to the average person like was, glad handing in the 80s and the 90s for politicians. You had to talk to real people, not just, not just your tribalistic constituents. And so I think they've realized that. And so that's gone. And so they don't even bother.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up Sydney Sweeney. I was watching some just clips of various things. I didn't really spend a lot of time watching TV or online this week, but I did see a few clips of the continued outrage of Sydney Sweeney and her ad. And it was funny. They showed the ad, and I don't think they did this intentionally because they were trying to make the case against Sydney Sweeney. So I don't think this was intentional how they did it. But they show the ad, and they show her wearing these clothes, and you could call it a pretty seductive way of it.
Oh yeah,
that's the word I would use, right? Yeah. And then so they stopped showing the ad, and they cut to these young women that are, I say young, they're probably 30, and they look. They're considerably overweight. They have the pink hair. They have the weird Buddy Holly glasses. They have the makeup that's not flattering. That like is almost like a caricature of how women wear makeup.
Yeah,
not like a clown, but it was just not flattering. It was not attractive. It was performative.
Yeah.
And so you look at Sydney Sweeney, and then you look at them, and you're like, okay, well, if I was a young man, which I'm definitely heading in one direction over the other, they just were not physically appealing. They were just not attractive. Yeah. And they did things to make it themselves further unattractive aesthetically in their size and their clothing and their makeup and their hair and things like that. And then they started talking, and they were just vile, hateful. They were just mean. Mean fat girls is what there's no other way to say it, right? And again, I come from a long line of fat people. I got nothing against fat people, right? But my long line of fat people doesn't criticize Richard Gere or Brad Pitt or Sydney Sweeney when they're when they're in commercials. You know what I'm saying? So you look at them physically, and they're unattractive, and then forget because I hadn't heard them speak yet. Just like physically, you look at them unattractive, and then they started talking. I was like, okay, if you couldn't see their physical appearance and you just heard them talking, extremely unattractive. And so I was thinking the whole time as I'm watching this thing, and they wonder why they're losing young men.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think when you've adopted this idea that everything is everybody else's fault, so, including my appearance and whether people like me or, when you adopt that, then you either have to lean into that. You have to lean into this idea that the world is awful and unfair, and it should be that somebody who's 400 pounds and somebody who's 105 pounds, are just, they've got equal outcomes. Their health can be equal, their attractiveness and their friends and their happiness. You have to lean into that, because otherwise you have to end up then taking responsibility for what you can do about it. Or you have to say, I think most self-aware people, I think you and I are pretty self-aware. I could list for you more of my own faults than probably anybody else could, and I know them, and I'm like, no, this habit of mine, I really am working on to change this habit so I'm healthier. I shouldn't eat this kind of stuff, or whatever it happens to be. It doesn't even matter. But if you're self-aware, you're aware of your own problems, and you don't require other people to celebrate the things about you that are maybe not healthy or not, conducive to having good relationships with other people. But if you're the other way, if you say nothing's my problem, nothing's my fault, I am 100% beautiful, smart, and deserving of everything as I am right now, and on a spiritual level, I'll go along with that, but on a physical level, that ain't the way the world works. Then you have to get mad, and you have to tell everybody else that they're wrong and all that.
Yeah, and I would also add for Kenny G, again, the guy we're talking to 70 years or whatever in the future, who's looking back wondering what was wrong with us. I would also add the thing to look out for. So you have that cohort you described, where the people who say, no matter how I am, I should be accepted and celebrated. Right. But then there's a hierarchy level above that, which is the people who advocate for that.
Yeah.
The people who advocate for that are a higher. They're higher. They want to be, and they seem to be getting credit for being a higher level of status because they're loudmouths. They're pushing for that. So there's the bottom layer where everyone you could weigh what you want and look how you want, and then you should be equally celebrated as Cindy Crawford and Richard Gere, or Robert Redford, or whoever your heartthrob is that you're looking at. But then above those people is the ones who advocate for this and push for that and stick their finger in the eye of the establishment. They're morally superior to those who just want the outcome. And that is the behavior to look for if you're Kenny G, is when you start seeing the uprising of people wanting to be that upper tier of supremacy. You're heading down the wrong path, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also, see, and that's the dividing line between the activist class and the let's bully the majority into doing everything we want kind of thing. I mean, it was just that there was a story, I don't know, a few years back. I think it was during the George Floyd riots, where you had I don't remember all the details, but there was in a city, all the police in that city washed wash the feet of like criminals or maybe it wasn't even criminals, maybe it was just people in some minority status or something like that. Well, okay, so in the Christian tradition, there's feet washing and all that, and that's a very good thing as an act of personal humility. But this was not that. This was an act of like subservience and reparations for things that you did not do. And that's when that kind of infection, I think, goes throughout the entire culture, and what we've seen the backlash against in recent times.
Yeah. It reminds me, I had forgotten about this, but whatever, 4 or 5 years ago when this was the common thing you saw on TV, I remember seeing videos of white people just walking on the street. They would see a black person just like fall to their knees and apologize in front of him, but you know what I never saw them do, Dave? I never saw them write a check.
That's right.
So again, it's all performative. Right? You do the thing that gets the videos and the likes and the virality, and you do the thing that gets that, but you don't do the thing that has substance, which is okay. Well, why don't you just like give me your car?
Right. Yes. Exactly.
I'm not gonna do that. I mean, come on. I got a new Volvo here. I can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's also where it goes to. It always goes to a certain point, and then again, that phrase that we've come back to over and over again: reality always wins. Because there's a certain point you just say, this is just, I've always thought this was kind of weird. I thought it was going to pass. No, we're not doing this anymore. We're not playing that way anymore.
All right. Well, I got to show you this clip. This is like the longest clip I've ever played on here. It's a minute and a half, but it's so fascinating to me. So it's completely off topic, but this is so fascinating to me to watch this woman. I believe she's a history teacher. So she's a history teacher, and here's her doing I think it's a TikTok video. Let's see here. Okay. So I'm just going to play the video, and I'm going to pause it in a couple spots because I got some thoughts here, Dave.
Okay.
So here's this history teacher giving us a lesson on the Incas.
I will die on this hill. I'm specifically talking about the Inga here. We're not talking about the Mexica. That's a whole separate type of sacrifice. If we're just looking at Tawantinsuyu, the Quechua people of the Incan Empire, they practice sacrifices like most other civilizations throughout history did.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. So she's going to go on to lecture us about some things, but she says they practice sacrifices like most other civilizations did. Now, what do you and I talk about that was happening throughout history and all civilizations, and still happens today, but only the United States and Great Britain and some of these other countries are held accountable for?
Slavery. Yeah.
It baffles me to watch these people, and they can't see how idiotic they sound when they say this stuff, because which would you rather be, Dave? Would you rather be sacrificed or a slave?
I'll take slavery because at least I can get away from that, right? I might get free at some point.
And even if you say me and Dave are a bunch of wusses and we wouldn't put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. Okay, I'll grant you that. But there's been slaves. They had an alternative,
right?
And they didn't choose it, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna continue with this lady here. Oops, I pushed the wrong button. Sorry. How do I get where I want to get there? Oh my goodness, I can't figure out the technology here, Dave. I want to there we go.
In times of crisis, so famine, natural disasters. But the unique thing about the Quechua is that when you're looking at like the Incan civilization, you essentially have the elites and then you have everyone else. Sacrifices were volunteers from the elite class because they believed that the elites were closer to the gods and could therefore appease them better. Also, in terms of sacrifice, they were kind about it. Hear me out. Because unlike the Mexica, when you're like ripping out a still beating heart out of someone's chest, the Inca would intentionally use coca leaves and would use chicha and would drug up the sacrifice and then leave them on a mountain, a cold, chilly mountain, to be exposed to the elements. Which, if you're a volunteer sacrifice where you're heavily drugged before you die. Also, I mean, I can equate human sacrifice throughout history to so many things. And I think the fact that a lot of people are commenting, oh, but the sacrifice, is again indicative of the fact that you have received a quite white education because you are knowing them for the bad things that they have done and not all of the wonders that they accomplished. So
okay. Now, what other civilization do people argue about in modern times where one cohort looks at all the bad things they've done and forget all the great things that they've done, and one cohort says, "Yeah, we've done some bad things, but collectively, across the aggregate, like lives are better, by and large."
Right. Yeah.
Anything come to mind there, Dave?
We seem to have the situation in the Middle East, Israelis and Arabs and Palestinians, and it seems
States,
to.
I mean, you and I spent the first handful of episodes talking about this podcast talking about, yeah, there's some things that obviously if we had to do over again, we wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
But when you take the sum of the parts and put it together, we've also created what I would consider the best country that's ever been.
Right.
But some people, like this woman, would pluck out those bad things and say that the whole thing's got to be burned down.
Yeah.
So again, just completely obtuse to the fact that you're making the case for the thing that you're making the case against in modern times. You're making the case against your behavior using a historical society as the example.
Basically, she's got an agenda, and she has to find something out of history that she can spin to fit her agenda. Now, I'm not sure whether or not how much of what she actually says is factually accurate either, because
Dave, she's an academic teacher. I mean, how dare you question that?
As I said, I'm not sure how much she said that's factually accurate either, so I would have to double check that and see. But lauding them for the way that they did. Okay, sure, if you're going to kill people, drug them up first, but I'm still not sure that the institution is really worth the value of that institution. So.
Yeah, I just again, I talk about tribalism a lot on here, and I know I'm guilty of this. I have my own biases and blind spots, and I'm sure I make counter, points that are counter to a bigger, broader narrative that I'm buying into or supporting or even trying to further. I'm sure I do all the same thing. But I just think it's interesting. It'd be interesting for Kenny G. Again, we're talking about like, what does this moment feel like, and what are the things you should look out for?
Right.
This is what this moment feels like. Stark contrast to her views on the United States. Now, the video doesn't show her views on the United States, but
you could probably intuit what they are.
You could intuit based on other things that she's about, where she stands on the United States, and probably where she stands on the United States, and whether or not we should be in existence because of slavery.
Right.
But her illustrations are counter to her point about the United States.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think I think from her perspective, it again is narrative over substance and narrative over, counterfactuals. If I'm going to put forth a hypothesis, then I need to be able to answer the counterfactuals, that argue against that hypothesis. I think she'd have a really difficult time doing that. It'd be interesting to see what the comments were on the response to all that, because I'm sure there were like a lot of, maybe not so much. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we only got a few minutes left here. I think that we have to circle back to something we spent a fair bit of time talking about last week, which was the Russia collusion hoax unfolding. And again, this is something I'm more drawn to this story than I am anything for so many reasons. I think again, just like most of these things, it's just fascinating to watch, for me to watch how this is going to unfold. You got I saw that a handful of people were subpoenaed to speak before Congress, including Comey, Brennan. So for those who didn't listen last week, the Russia hoax origins has kind of been coming to light, and there's a strong camp that says, it's fake news. There's another camp that's like, it was 10 years ago, let it go, move on, move on kind of thing. Right. And then you got another camp that's like, we were finding all this stuff out, but nobody's going to do anything about it because Republicans have no stones and they're not going to do anything. And then you got another cohort that's like, hang them high and
lock them up,
get the posse out. Let's go. Let's ride. But there were subpoenas issued.
Yeah.
And it was referred, Tulsi Gabbard did refer it to the DOJ.
Yeah. For criminal investigation. Yeah.
What anything in your mind changed on this, Dave? I mean, last week we were both kind of like, let's just wait and see what happens. But what are you still kind of in that camp, or do you think this means movement, or is this all a show?
No, I do. See, here's the linchpin of all that. The linchpin of all that is that Obama has presidential immunity, so he won't be. He's not been summoned. So, and the reason that's the linchpin is because the head guy never takes the fall, or rarely takes the fall, and so I don't know that Obama really cares that Brennan or Comey or even Hillary Clinton. Now, I also don't think necessarily that Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton will. Well, Hillary in particular, because she was the architect there. I don't think she'll take the fall because she's just too old. She's just. I don't think that. But it would not surprise me.
All over 70, aren't they? I mean, maybe Comey's only in his 60s.
Yeah, well, Comey still has some. 70. Yeah, Comey's not that. I mean, yeah, Brennan is. I really do think at this point it's very possible that there are significant sanctions. I don't know that anybody's going to go to jail, but it wouldn't necessarily shock me now if there were something akin to that. Well, you're under house arrest for 3 years, you're disbarred. I mean, after Bill Clinton's perjury thing, he was disbarred. So he did pay a price. That was the heaviest price in any politician, other than Nixon resigning, and, which was 50 years ago now. So I do think there's more legs to it now than I would have said. I think it's escalated since last week. I do think that.
Yeah, I still I agree. I think Obama's going to have presidential immunity, and I also something I said last week, which is I think that we elected that guy. That's kind of on the populace for electing a bad.
That's right.
I think the other people are more criminal. But then the other thing I would say is, I think that as you were talking a minute ago, it kind of occurred to me, he's politically so deft that he would have made sure that number one was taken care of from the get-go. I can't imagine he would have been foolish enough to not protect himself. I do think that it's going to be I can't see how they're going to unpaint themselves out of this corner in Congress. I mean, if they can plead the fifth, they can do that, which doesn't look great.
Right.
But the DOJ investigation is separate from that. So, and they apparently found, again, all these things go back to hubris and narcissism and arrogance and, all that kind of stuff, right? But they apparently found these burn bags in the FBI building.
Yeah, cash for shelf.
Burned. Yeah, which...
I don't understand that. Brian, I don't understand if you're concerned enough that you're gonna throw some documents away, you're gonna get rid of them, and you don't follow through, and you don't actually do. The thing that surprised me when I found the burn is, why didn't you burn them? You morons! You're a lousy criminal.
Here's what I was gonna say is going back to my arrogance and hubris and all this kind of stuff, which is. Well, of course they're going to burn them because I'm the emperor, and I said burn the damn thing, right?
Yeah.
But you forget when you have a bureaucracy that big, you have incompetent people in places.
That's true.
And you might have had people who thought you were a douchebag for doing this stuff. And said, oh, yeah, don't worry, boss. I got it. I'm on it. Stuck him in a room somewhere where they maybe found 6 years later.
That could very well be. It's the whole thing. I mean, the whole thing just stinks to high heaven. The one thing you hope out of all that is it would put the fear of God enough into people that they wouldn't do this kind of stupid stuff anymore. I mean, that would be the aspirational part of me. I don't believe it's true because we're in the fourth turning, and that's not going to happen in the fourth turning. But it's.
I don't think that they will have consequences like jail time, and I mean, again, they're all old, so if they get jail time, it'd be the last 6 years of their life or whatever. I don't think that's. But when you think back on, when I was growing up, and no relation, by the way, but when I was growing up, I heard, dozens of times that Warren G. Harding was the most corrupt president in the United States history.
Right.
He didn't go to prison.
Right.
He didn't get any fines, but his legacy was absolutely ruined.
Tarnished,
look at Richard Nixon. He didn't go to prison. He didn't pay any fines. His legacy is absolutely ruined. And I think for people who are in this performative state or performative era, I think that's the penalty that's the biggest of all.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them uncovering all kinds of things, and they don't spend a day in prison, and they don't pay $1 in fines, but their legacy is absolutely tarnished. I'm totally cool with that.
Well, some of the outcomes. One outcome I would love to see with this is the Clinton Library gets shut down. that would be, that would be in terms of, legacy destruction and all of that. That would be, because I still think there's plenty of evidence. Now this is extending, but I still think there's plenty of evidence that Bill Clinton was very bad to women and perhaps did some significantly illegal thing. I mean, all this, they accuse Trump all this stuff, but I think there's a lot of evidence that Clinton, also was, or not also, but was far worse. So, shut down the library.
One step further, imagine Obama has presidential immunity, but there's nothing that says his presidential library has to keep his name on it.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah, no, that's true. If they, in fact, that would be some rich irony if that got shut down. I mean,
that seems to me that would be a punishment so much worse than prison. I mean,
it would.
He's a multi-billionaire at this point, probably. Like, what's he going to pay? $100 million in fines, let's say. Okay, right. That's nothing.
Right.
And he's not going to go to prison. I mean, I think there's a 1/10 of 1% chance that happens.
It's not going to happen.
A variety of reasons, right? But you take away the legacy, and man, that matters. And I do think that for these other players, the federal government's game plan with this stuff always is just to roll people up, right? Yeah. You start with you work them until you find the weak link. They give somebody up. You work them until they give the weak link. You roll it up, right? I think that's what they call it, rolling it up or something like that. I can't imagine some of these people have a whole lot of allies once they lose power. Right now, or 5 years ago, all these names we've mentioned, lots of influence, lots of power, lots of say-so behind the scenes, arguably telling the donors who to vote or who to contribute to, like lots of power. In this situation, if they lose that power, I don't think people genuinely like them.
No, I don't think there's loyalty. There's not built-in loyalty.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're going to be protecting them if they don't have the power to warrant that protection.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I think this could get. I think it could get really it could get really interesting.
I think it could. Well, and hopefully it does, because all of the stuff that has been alleged and looks to be the reality of it is just ugly, and is, it's kind of backroom stuff that you see in movies. It's not the kind of stuff that should happen in, the greatest democratic republic in history.
It's arguably the worst behavior our system allows.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we end up allowing it now, of course, the question will come: can they move through this before the fall elections of next year? Because if the Justice Department will still be under Trump's control at that point, but one of the houses of Congress may or may not be. I know the way that the Democrats are imploding, it's quite likely that they'll.
I don't know, Dave. They're up to 19% popularity.
That's right. And they've got and Elizabeth Warren is solidly behind Zoran Mondani.
I tell you, if I ever have to watch her utter a sound into a microphone again, it's gonna be one time too many. Good Lord. I don't know.
That's true. That's true.
Anyhow, so in dictatorships and autocratic systems and things like that, they can take out lots of people and not get a lot of pushback. In our system, they take out people. I have no doubt about that.
Sure.
But it's in very small quantities. Right. So that's what I mean when I say this is the kind of behavior that I would argue that is the worst that our system allows. It's behind the scenes kind of shady stuff, and we're going to bring these people down. But you can't go out and murder 500,000 people because they protested.
Right.
But you can do this. And it's going to be fun to watch for me. I tell you.
Well, hopefully you do it quickly. The question, this has to be done for this to really have legs and to work well, to accomplish something, to be at least a preventative or some level of justice. It needs to happen quickly. So I think that's going to be one of the keys.
Yeah. Well, that's not the federal government's strong suit. Their strong suit is power, not speed. So,
but you got to say Trump's superpower is speed. I mean,
true.
We're a little over 7 months into his presidency, and it feels like 5 years.
Yeah, he signed. I think I saw a couple of days ago. He signed 177 executive orders, which is the most, obviously, in history or something like that. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, as Dave said in the beginning, we'd love to hear where you think we got it right, where we got it wrong. We're trying to explain to future generations what this moment in time feels like as they look back and wonder what the hell was wrong with those people. You can do that by going to unsilentpodcast.com, or Rumble has a great comment section. And that's it for this week. And this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.